for Business and Environment at Yale. I'm also the acting director of our Yale Center for Environmental Law and Policy. So I wear like a bunch of hats here in this area generally. And I'm the former commissioner of energy and environment for the state of Connecticut, which is my home state as well. So I will pass it over to Trent.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I'm Trent Cummings. I'm the online programs delivery associate here at FDCE, and together with Heather, who will pass it to next, I lead the delivery of the program. I also have to say, really happy to see a good number of people from my hometown of DC online. So hello to all of you in particular, and I'll pass it over to Heather.
Thanks, Trent. As Trent mentioned, I am also an online program delivery associate for the Yale Center for Business and the Environment, and I also help lead the delivery of the program and connect with all of the participants and help make it a smooth experience for everyone. And I'm originally from upstate New York, and I saw a couple of those as well.
So to get us started, I'm just going to give you a quick run of house. We are really delighted to have you here, and our goal for this session is to give you a kind of the broad context within which this program was designed and why we're so excited to have you here and look forward to reading your applications, give you more insight onto the program itself, what it really looks like to be a participant in this program, what we cover in the curriculum, and give you some perspectives on what it's like to be a participant and what are the opportunities when you are in the Financing and Deploying Clean Energy program. And then we will save ample time at the end of this session so that we can answer your questions, because I think that's a lot of the reason why you all came here today. So you'll be able to submit those questions using the question and answer tool. So you can submit those questions at any time, but we will probably not get to them until the question and answer session at the end. So be sure to, as they come up, go ahead and feel free to submit those questions. Great, so without further ado, take it away, Rob.
Thank you, Coral. And I will start with just a little bit about us and this program. And we've said now a few times the Center for Business and the Environment. We often fall into acronyms. We call it CBAE for those who will hear us using that term. This is a joint initiative between the School of the Environment and the School of Management at Yale, and being housed between, those are the two pictures, being housed between these two worlds is actually quite wonderful because they both have powerful and complementary networks and a terrific array of faculty, alumni, and external partners that really help enhance the teaching experience and our students' experience. And we think it enhances the FDCE experience tremendously. So CBAE for the last 15 years has really been trying to educate and inspire interdisciplinary leaders throughout our school environment to come up with innovative business solutions to fundamental and systematic environmental problems. Is it okay that I call us a bunch of nerds? Well, we kind of are. We would get nerdy about all these. Yeah, at least got smiles from the rest of the queue. That we like thinking about these problems and how to solve them, and really getting our students and our certificate program members excited about meeting challenges, and some of the big challenges of today, including climate change and the transition to clean energy. And that's why we decided to help design this program to align with the urgency of this issue. So next slide, please. Our mission here for the FDCE program is to really accelerate this deployment of clean energy to face the climate crisis. And we realized that we needed folks like you, working professionals who are at the forefront of your respective fields, your businesses, the things that you're doing. We want to grab onto you and have you now part of the frontline folks working on this acceleration of the clean and just energy transition. And we know from our past experience with your cohorts in prior years that you're all curious, you're innovators, you're builders, you have this sort of, passion about you, that we love bringing our world-class Yale faculty and training opportunities to help this now growing network of people really make a difference. And that's the excitement, why I really love being a part of this program, is all the time I get to spend with all of you who are the participants in the program, both during the program and then my continued relationship with folks who have been through the program before and are out there doing really awesome stuff. Next slide. So why now? And this is actually one of it. They apparently are making like clothes and like ties. I've seen like the Hawkins stripes on a whole bunch of merch. We don't have, we have merch, but not climate striped merch. But the point here, and many of you have probably seen this before, is that we are on the right-hand side of this graphic, the red zone. We are now in a climate crisis, and we need to act immediately. Coral, there are 2 more clicks here, which will show up. Yeah, thank you. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has recently issued their 6th assessment report, and it basically paints a fairly stark picture. The science side of it has said, yes, climate change has already begun. There are significant changes to our climate system that we cannot undo. And it's all because of our gargantuan output of greenhouse gases. That's a literal quote, us and our gargantuan output. That second report on impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability, I love the BBC had a good sort of take on it and 5 key takeaways. 1, it's worse than we thought. Way worse was their language. 2, and for the British, that's actually saying something extreme in that regard. 2, loss and damage is real, particularly for our most climate vulnerable communities. 3, technology is not a silver bullet. 4, cities offer hope if they're pushing for renewables and clean transport. And 5, and perhaps most importantly, there's a small window for action, but that window is closing fast. So next slide, please, Coral. And so that's why we're focusing on folks like you, because we're in this moment where my current full-time students, they're probably, I teach at the undergrad level and the graduate level, they have 5, 10, 15 years or so before they're ready to do something. We need all of you doing something right now. And that's, again, why we helped create this program. So why now? Sorry, why now? 197 countries have signed on to the Paris climate agreement to say, yeah, we're actually going to commit ourselves trying to hold our temperature increases well below 2 degrees and strive towards limiting it to a 1.5 degree increase. But that means we need to actually now figure out what that means in terms of the practical on the ground approaches to making that reality come true. The how we get there is a bit unknown, and that's next slide, where the IPCC has actually in 2018 tried to say, okay, if we really are serious about 1.5 degrees of global warming, what does that mean? What do we have to do between now and 2030, now and between 2030 and 2050? Oh, you can go to the next slide. You guys are getting the like Rob Cleon like speed, like the 1.5 speed version of what you get in the course when I teach the policy course. So why now? Well, the IPCC modeled 4 different pathways that we could take to achieve that 1.5 degree goal. In this graphic is one of my favorites from this report, from the left to the right, shows different sort of speeds with which we decarbonize. That's the gray block getting lower, and or the requirement of negative emissions, either through the brown, which is about forestry and land use, or the yellow, which is about carbon capture, removal of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The takeaway is that we basically need a really precipitous decline in our reliance on fossil fuel. That sort of, and our sort of scenarios here are how fast we can actually get the policy aligned with our ambition to decarbonize. One more click. What does that mean in terms of the energy mix? And so, Coral, if we go to the next slide, thank you. Again, from that report and focusing in on how much renewable energy we need, it's pretty dramatic in all scenarios. That share, that percent of renewable energy by just 2030. Now, 8 years, 7 years, gosh, it's 2023. 7 years away, the amount of percentage of renewables that we need in 2030 and 2050, a dramatic shift in how the electric system works. Good news is that our electric generation mix, the globally, as renewables are about 30% in 2021, with an additional 10% from nuclear, so about 40%. But look at all these. That's about, that's halfway-ish, to what is needed to address the crisis. Next slide. The International Energy Agency, the IEA, issued this really sort of groundbreaking net zero by 2050 report and put a number on what does that mean in terms of the economic activity and the investment in our clean energy system. $4 trillion by 2030. That's per year of investment in that energy system. That includes investment in clean energy, clean electricity generation, going from about $500 billion a year to $1.5 trillion a year in the next 10 years, increasing our investment in transmission distribution grids from about $260 billion today to over $800 billion by 2030. That's $90 billion a year in EV charging infrastructure. That's $40 billion a year in hydrogen and carbon capture and storage pipeline infrastructure. That's a lot of investment. That's a lot of dramatic sort of economic activity. So where are we today? Next slide. Well, I tend to be a glass half sort of person. So I'm happy to see that we're heading in the right direction, even coming out of the pandemic, which stalled a number of projects. But if you notice our 2022 numbers from Bloomberg New Energy Finance, shows that we're now over $1 trillion invested in clean energy in 2022. And that's more than doubled the investment from just 2019. Which is terrific. And it's all across the board in the traditional places, the renewable energy, which is a lot of solar and wind, our investments in electrified transport, electric vehicles are booming, but interesting new things like hydrogen, new nuclear, sustainable materials, all those pieces that have to come together successfully. But that's still a quarter of what we need to be on track for 2030. So keep that in mind. We need $4 trillion a year invested. And last but not least, because I teach the policy course, what can policy do to help amplify this? And this is a really interesting moment in time, particularly in the US, though the rest of the world is looking at the US and what it's doing in terms of putting dollars into this transition, how capital governments can be a catalyst for these types of increased deployment of renewables. The other thing I will just note here is the importance for at least the Biden administration, one that is all of government. So it's not just the energy department or the environment, but it's transportation, it's the Department of Defense, it's the Treasury, all of them working towards a similar goal. And their Justice 40 initiatives, thinking about if we're going to spend all these resources, how can we do so with an eye towards justice and equity to make sure we're not leaving folks behind. The numbers are big and exciting, which makes this moment in time really exciting. And then I'll go to my last slide, because I know you want to get into the nuts and bolts of how we deliver the FDCE program. To me, this moment in time doesn't need the perfect, which is often the enemy of the good. We need to be trying a whole lot of creative, new, interesting things to break down our existing status quo structures. And that's really why we're excited about this group and the cohorts we've seen in financing deploying clean energy, because I think we need policymakers who understand finance, and we need financiers who can evaluate technology and understand the policy risks and political risks. We need engineers who can advocate for new policy or think about the finances themselves. And we need an engaged nonprofit sector and government sector who's there to help really advocate for and create the structures for this rapid acceleration of clean energy deployment. And that's all of you, and that's all of your cohort together, which is why I love my time that I get to spend with you, because I get to see those interactions and those creative, soup that gets, mixed together. It's near lunchtime, so I'm hungry. So I'm thinking about food, but when all those ingredients come together, it's really quite amazing and inspiring. And when you have folks thinking across all those different sectors, and that's hopefully what you get out of our program, is that understanding of how all these pieces need to work together. So that's the rapid fire version of me. I'm happy to now pass it over to Trent, who can walk you through some of our curriculum and how we structure your time with us in the FDCE.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. You teed me up very nicely there. So we'll jump right in because this is actually quite a bit to cover. We'll start with this kind of web we have here. Of course, we're really fortunate to be bringing this program to you from our space here at the intersection of the School of the Environment and the School of Management at Yale. And we have this vast and powerful network available to us, which we're certainly very lucky to have that. These folks that you see here are really only a fraction of the faculty and external partners that have been involved in the creation and delivery of this program. Year to year, you of course see, I want to point your attention out here to Rob there, like front and center at the bottom. He of course leads our clean energy policy course, and we'll get more into how each of those courses look in a little bit here. But we really wanted to present this web not just as a nod to all of these people's fantastic contributions, but also as a bit of a visual representation of how all of this subject matter is interrelated. So if we can go to the next slide, we can get started with our curriculum overview here. As you can see, maybe you can reference that kind of timeline we have at the very bottom there of the 2023 to 2024 program cycle. The program is about 9 to 10 months long, and it's a blend of self-paced, asynchronous, and synchronous courses. So starting over there on the far left, I will note that you see that there's foundations courses. There'll be 2 of those, and I'll describe more about those in a moment here. But we start with what's called How to Study Online, and that's that HTSO there. And the purpose of that is really kind of getting everyone acclimated with learning in an online environment. It's certainly likely, actually, that most of our participants will have been outside of an academic environment for quite some time. So it helps to kind of get your bearings before you jump into the actual coursework. And our first foray into that coursework is the Energy Foundations course. And now that's the first of those 2 foundations courses I was talking about. And those are really used as a primer to get you prepared for our core courses. So Energy Foundations is really a primer for our first core course, Clean Energy Policy. And in Energy Foundations, you're going to be familiarizing yourself with some fundamental energy concepts. After you finish up Energy Foundations and before you start Clean Energy Policy, you'll move into orientation, which is a fantastic time. I think it's the best way really we can start this program. It's 1 week long. And there are mandatory midday sessions throughout that week. And it's your first opportunity as an FDCE to kind of meet your fellow cohort members, meet members of the Yale faculty and staff. And we also acknowledge that being online and learning online can be somewhat of an isolating experience. So from the very start, like from this orientation week onward, we established that, yes, this is a high quality academic program, but we also make it clear that at its heart, it's a community building effort. And we'll hear a little bit more about how we make that possible, both in my spiel here and then a little bit from Heather after me. Orientation is also an opportunity to kind of share some of your experiences as you come into the program, and maybe share what you'd like to learn, what you'd like to glean from your time in the program. And you ready yourself to enter the program with intention and kind of a renewed hunger for learning. After that, you enter our first core course, which I better get this right because Rob's here, co-led by our very own Rob Klee and Professor Dan Esty. He's our Hillhouse Professor of Environmental Law and Policy here at the Yale Law School and Yale School of the Environment. And he's also the former commissioner of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. The kind of overarching goal of this course is to learn about the role that policy plays in shaping the transition to a clean energy economy. And I think one project that's really worth highlighting that people seem to enjoy year to year is our policy memo assignment, which is where we kind of ask our participants to write to their local or national policymakers on a subject of their choice. You get to submit multiple drafts and run with that. And if you're lucky, you're able to have your piece elevated into our Clean Energy Finance Forum later on in the spring. So that's an exciting assignment. We enjoy that one every year. After you finish up clean energy policy, you'll then move on to our technology transitions core course. Each of our core courses, if I have not mentioned this before, is 8 weeks long. So the clean energy policy course, 8 weeks, move into technology transitions, and you get ready for another 8 weeks of learning, this time with Professor Michael Orostalio. He's our senior research scientist and scholar of Earth and planetary sciences. And he's also the co-founder and inaugural director of the Energy Studies multidisciplinary academic program here at Yale. This unit is admittedly a bit more quantitative than our clean energy policy unit. So if you, let's say, are working on Capitol Hill and you absolutely crushed it while you were working on that policy memo, you might find this unit a little bit more challenging, but not to worry, we have a fantastic support system in place for you, just in case you actually do run into any challenges. This course kind of focuses a little bit more on understanding which energy technologies are available to us today, how they work, and then what their associated limitations are as we take steps towards this low carbon future. After you finish up the tech transitions unit, we have almost a month-long winter break there. And we ask, as you head into that break, that's a time when you're coming up on the new year, everybody's making New Year's resolutions. And we ask that, yes, it's great to focus on goal setting, but also take some time to kind of reflect on your accomplishments thus far in the program. And that doesn't mean you have to review everything and re-quiz yourself, but just take some time to take stock of where you are in the program as you head into the back half of the coursework. So when you come back from the winter break, you'll enter our second foundations course. That one's called Finance Foundations. And similar to Energy Foundations, preparing you for clean energy policy, this foundations course prepares you for renewable energy project finance. You're familiarizing yourself with concepts of just fundamental concepts of finance. And if you haven't been using it, maybe you'll get a lot more comfortable with using Microsoft Excel again. Once you finish up Finance Foundations, you'll head into our final core course. You'll head into our second to last core course, which is Renewable Energy Project Finance. That one's led by Professor Dan Gross. He's a lecturer here at Yale University, and he's also the director of Amazon's Climate Pledge Fund. In that course, you're going to learn a little bit about the foundational principles of project finance, both from the perspective of the renewable energy investor as well as the developer. And then you'll finally reach the final core course of our full year program, which is led by Professor Richard Kaufman, chair of New York's State Energy Research and Development Authority Board, and affectionately sometimes called New York's Energy Czar. The focus in that course is innovation in each of the areas we've studied over the course of the year so far. So innovation in policy, innovation in technology, and innovation in finance. And we start off with an emphasis on green banks. We actually, one of the first assignments is a green bank memo, which is also quite enjoyed. The core question of that course is how do you create a market for clean tech and move capital where it needs to go? So all of that fits into about 9 to 10 months. I'll get into how we do that in a moment here. But if we can next go to the next slide, and we can take a bit of a deeper dive into the curriculum and maybe see how it integrates a bit. So again, I mentioned we have those 2 foundations courses. That's where you'll learn things like maybe an introduction to basic energy units, bond math, maybe how to better understand and apply the time value of money, the laws of thermodynamics, and thermal and electrical efficiency. Then once you move on to some of the core courses, so for example, in CEP, you might learn about the utility business models and challenges associated with energy efficiency programs before getting into tech transitions, where you'll get a better idea of maybe the effects of efficiency interventions on energy systems. You can then move into renewable energy project finance, of course, after that finance foundations unit to prepare you. And in that course, you'll learn maybe you get a chance to review the ways that projects sell electricity to the grid, let's say, and maybe take a look at the concepts of risk allocation in power purchase agreements. You'll finish up with innovation, and that's where you might consider and replicate models for scaling efficiency programs. So that's kind of like a quick overview of how you might integrate some of the content that you learn throughout each of our courses. If we move to my final slide here, I'm gonna kind of give you a quick breakdown of your commitments, both weekly mandatory commitments, and then some of the optional things you can get into as well. So how do we fit all this coursework into 9 months? As a program participant, you are going to be going at a pace of about 1 module per week through those 8 weeks of each core course. We've set that up to take the quote unquote average Yale learner about 5 hours per week. We acknowledge, of course, there is no such thing as the average Yale learner, but the average person that joins us should take about 5 hours per week. And you can see the breakdown, our expected breakdown there. So about 2 to 3 hours of working your way through content that includes maybe readings, quizzes, discussion questions, and the like. 1 to 2 hours of video playback. And then we have 1 hour of live session every Thursday, midday. That will feature a Yale faculty member, a guest expert, or maybe sometimes even both. We'll get lucky. And sometimes we'll have maybe the faculty member interview the guest expert or have a conversation with the guest expert. Other weekly commitments will include all those assignments I mentioned. So those readings, quizzes, discussion questions, with very rare exceptions of larger assignments like that policy memo. All assignments are released on Mondays and then they're due the following Monday. So released on Monday at noon, due the following Monday, 11:59 a.m. We have those live sessions. Again, I said every Thursday, midday. And then also each week I mentioned that we have a support system in place, and a major part of that support system is that we have a team of TAs, our teaching team. They offer weekly office hours, and sometimes a faculty member is able to make time to hold office hours as well, which is always a treat. And then in addition to that, we also try to make sure that we organize and advertise various opportunities for networking throughout the year. I'll start with kind of the biggest one that comes to mind is the Yale Clean Energy Conference. We held the first instance of the Clean Energy Conference last spring, a second instance this past fall in November. And we're quickly, the gears are already in motion planning the next one. We also have online cohort meetups. We've actually just kind of introduced weekly meetups this year. And we're actually, we have our eye on organizing some regional meetups in the future as well. Because again, we understand it's tough to kind of just be online, and you want to maybe meet the people who are around you. Don't worry. I'm not seeing the slide. Don't worry about that though. I just have a quick last point, which is our community platform. I'm not going to detail this too much because Heather is going to take you on a nice tour through it. That is also a fantastic resource for you, and you'll see why in just a moment. So maybe I'll just go ahead and pass it to Heather, who can give you some more details about how we interact online.
Awesome. Thanks, Trent. All right, so my goal is really just to give you a quick overview. I want to make sure we leave time for questions, but I just want to kind of walk you through what it really looks like on the day-to-day. So Trent did a great job talking about exactly what that curriculum entails, but I want to show you what that looks like in practice. So when you start the week, every week starts with an announcement. So this is a sneak peek into our clean energy policy course. So this is one of the core courses. This is the first core course. And so you'll see like announcements at the top. Every week starts with an announcement that kind of welcomes you in. You'll see this kind of week by week breakdown for each of the core courses and some general information. And then every course also has this weekly to-do list. So you'll see this sort of the general overview of the week's plan, and then you'll see the entirety of the week sort of laid out in a easy to follow format. So these lectures, Trent and I talked about those video lectures. We might take a look at one of these lecture videos. So this is of Rob Klee talking about the very beginning, sort of what is energy policy. This will be one of the very first lectures. But these only last about 5 minutes. So we break down those lecture videos into manageable chunks. So you might see a whole lot of them in your weekly breakdown, but they're short little lectures so that you can kind of absorb the material at a reasonable pace. And then those are broken up with discussion questions where you'll be interacting with your peers, required readings, as well as some optional readings to supplement your learning, quizzes that are pretty low stakes quizzes to just assess your learning in general. And then these assignments you'll see sort of scattered throughout as well. And sort of like the big assignments will be called out, and making sure that you'll sort of submit those on a regular basis. So it's really important to keep up with it on a weekly basis, because as you see, each of these weeks might contain a whole lot of things for you to do. But these live sessions, as Trent mentioned, these are 1 hour live sessions. Those will look much like this, except it'll be in more of an informal format. You'll be able to see all of your peers. Everyone will interact in one big screen during those required live sessions each week. There's also a handy checklist that you'll download. And then I just wanted to call out a few things that are like really special about this program. So this is kind of like your week by week breakdown. This is the format you'll be working in. And then as Trent mentioned, we have this community platform, which is sort of supplemental to everything. And this is kind of like this really unique platform where everyone will be able to interact with one another and previous members of other cohorts. So we have, these are sort of the entire network of the FDCE program. You can see sort of laid out on this map. There are hundreds of folks, including current participants, past participants, and staff and faculty and guest experts who've been part of the program. You can also, as Trent mentioned, we like to host events. And so these are some of like the past events that have been promoted on the platform. And some of them are networking events, many of them are online, lecture sort of things to supplement your learning, or just to kind of help you connect with other folks in the field. And these are some of the upcoming events, for instance, that, you know, we always make sure that we are keeping people up to date. This has actually been updated since the last time I was in here this morning. So there's a lot going on always. Some general news and publications, just like people will post job opportunities as well. So that's a big benefit of this particular networking platform. And then there's groups, and you will also belong to a specific group for your cohort where you will interact sort of during the program as well as after. And then I'm going to switch back to some slides just to close this out. And this is what the current cohort looks like. So before I showed you that sort of map of all of the cohorts and what everyone looks like around the world, but this is the current cohort right now has 117 participants, and you'll see that there's like an even split between people who have less than 10 years experience and more than 10 years experience. So wherever you fall in that spectrum, there could be a place for you in this program. So if you're worried that you're too far along in your career, or if you're not far along enough, hopefully this is kind of demonstrates, you know, we have a really diverse set of folks. And these are the countries that are represented just in this current cohort. So that 117 people, and you saw the map earlier of the distribution of all of the alumni and the entire network. So we have a, you know, decent representation here, and I think they all sort of face their own challenges, and we need to interact with those folks. Let me see. One more thing. There we go. And then you'll see sort of like the distribution of where people are coming from. You might wonder, what is everybody doing? What are they using this for? And, you know, the largest portion you can see is people in the private sector, especially working in the power sector, followed by finance and consulting. A fair number of folks working in advocacy, lobbying, public administration. And as Rab mentioned, we really need all of these different skills and connections to sort of meet our goals and advance the work that we're doing. So hopefully you see yourself somewhere in here. And then one final thing I wanted to mention before we take questions. A lot of people just like to see, what does the certificate look like? What do I get at the end of the program? If you successfully meet all of the requirements for each of the courses, you will receive a certificate from Yale that says you successfully met the requirements. It's a certificate of completion. And then this over here is just another little breakdown of some of the high bright discussions that have happened in that community platform, as we call it. And I will stop sharing and we can start taking questions.
So hopefully that was insightful and helpful to you all. There's a couple questions that have come in through the Q&A tool. If you have questions, please do feel free to submit them. Continue to submit those questions. Applications are open now. And so we would really love and encourage you to apply. This is one of our favorite times of year, is being able to review every application that comes through and look at those applications holistically. There are some questions in the chat or in our function that have been submitted asking about, do you recommend someone who's newer in the their energy career to apply? So as Heather pointed out, our cohorts, we strive to have a diverse cohort, and that includes the number of years of experience. And every year so far, we've had approximately 50% of the cohort have 10 or more years experience, and the other 50% have less than 10 years experience. As it regards your length of time in the industry, the one thing that's important that we consider is, are you in the position to be able to apply this program and do so immediately or in the near term? So, if you are in a new position, then that does qualify you. You're in a position where you can start to apply this right away. If you are in school and you're in a degree bearing program, say a master's degree program, this certificate program is not for you. We would encourage you to finish up whatever degree program that you're in, and then be placed, get started on your career path, and then apply to the certificate. So yes, we are looking for folks with all different number of years experience in the industry. And the average cohort size, this has changed through time. So when we first opened up the program, Catherine, we had 75 folks in the first cohort, and then we expanded it as we gained more support and we saw the great demand, and we had to really ensure that we had enough staffing and faculty support for a larger cohort. We're very concerned to ensure that folks are still getting a good experience and able to meet each other. And so we've nearly doubled that initial cohort size. And as as the demand changes and as we are capable, we will grow that cohort or not every year. So, that through time, the cohort size has changed. And
we have two sort of related questions. One of them is, do individuals enrolled in this program have access to Yale's Career Center? And another asked if they have access to Yale's alumni platform. So just Yale itself outside of the CBA community.
Great. So there's a number of resources available to you all as participants in the certificate. I think as it relates to career, there are a few different services that we provide within the program itself. So during orientation and then throughout the program, for example, providing support and helping you identify and strengthen your leadership skills, as well as your writing skills. And then we provide some support in learning more about, and there was another question here from Lindsay about the project finance course. So in that project finance course, you will actually, rather than just analyzing existing financial models, you're going to be building your own financial model. And I know that sounds kind of scary to some of you, or exciting, or both. But those will give you a very basic template and Starting with the first week of that course, we'll just build upon that. And by the end of the 8 weeks, you'll have a balance sheet created there and be able to analyze more complicated models that you may come across. And then there are some other career development opportunities as well. So there are events created to assist you in getting more insight in the clean energy industry, figuring out what people actually do and their pathways to those careers. And then there are networking events. So your own cohort is a wonderful resource for learning about job positions that are open and learning about what other companies are doing and so on. And then the Career Development Office at both the School of Environment and the School of Management do have some resources available as well. And then once you're an alum, you can continue to engage with us, and we encourage that you make use of that community platform that Heather shared. And then also just to keep in touch with us and attend events as you are able to on campus. None of our on-campus events are required, but you are highly encouraged to join us. So we have a clean energy conference every year, and that is one of our highlights of the year. And we will also be hosting a FDCE reunion events around the sidelines of that great big conference, which happens in November. And then there are other events that you're encouraged to come to as well. And don't worry, for those of you who are further out or have limited ability to travel, we have a plethora of virtual events to attend as well. Let's see. What are some other questions we have here? So opportunities to organize events. So there are a couple ways we do this. So there are the formal, sort of supported networking events that we provide that are facilitated by us. And then there are platforms and tools and our encouragement and support for you all to organize events on your own as well. So many folks use the community platform to state, oh, I'm going to the this particular conference, or I'm going to be in Boston this week. Is there anybody around who wants to meet up? There are a lot of those things happening, and we encourage that. We are also launching this year support for regional events. So our CBAE will provide some financial support so that you can host and create a regional event for FDCE alum to attend. And so, you know, you don't have to plan a huge conference or anything. It could be a small, just meet up for pizza type of event, but there are multiple ways which we encourage and try to support those in-person events and coordinations. Is there any additional cost beyond the admission fees? No. So the admission fees are for, we'll cover the tuition of the program. It will give you access to the Canvas platform where we host the course material. You'll have access to that platform and the course material for a year beyond the time that you graduate. And you are also able to download those materials, of course, not sharing them. They are the copyrighted materials, but they are there available for you to download. You can even download an entire course at once you finish the program. And then we also will provide you with that access to that community platform, and you will have lifelong access to that platform, and there will be no fees associated with that. If you were interested in coming to attend the conferences or other events on at Yale, we strive to make all of those accessible to people. We don't want finance to be a barrier, but you know, depending on who's running the session, there may be a small fee for attendance at an event, but that will vary depending on what the event is. Does the program address smart siting considerations to reduce the impact of renewable infrastructure on the environment?
I can grab that one if you want.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll start and feel free to fill in. That sounded like a wonderful topic for a policy memo. I mean, that to me would be the type of thing that if that's your particular interest in this sort of deployment sort of questions, yeah, I could see that turning into a very cool policy memo about the costs, the benefits, the equity and justice implications of citing. Those are all sort of topics that often, at least from my perspective in the policy, um, 8 weeks. Yeah, those are all the types of things that you're wrestling with of, where policy can encourage that those citing in right places, but those also are more expensive, or can be more expensive if you're trying to cite on brownfields or landfills or rooftops versus grid scale. And so, yeah, those are the wonderful things that we try to wrestle with. And I could definitely see a good policy memo and or op-ed coming out of that question. Coral, did you want to grab anything else from that one?
Also, this is, another program and additional course materials that I'm striving to create in our Clean Equitable Energy Development course that's under planning steps right now. Really will go in more detail on some of that. There's a lot to cover in the FDCE program, and so we try our very best to get everybody conversant and help you understand the context within which you work, and help you ask better questions and be able to have these better conversations with others who are working in a different arena, and those that you will partner with on these really complicated projects and solutions. And no one's going to become an expert in any one area when you have just 5 hours a week to devote to a program, but we do provide quite a bit of optional material for you if you have the interest and the time to dive in. And so I'll tell you that although we strive for 5 hours a week, there are people who have clocked 10 hours a week on this program because they just want to read every optional resource and come to every optional virtual event, and they get really fired up. So, I just keep that
they're often regulars at my office hours as well.
So we do welcome people who are wonky enthusiasts like us who have the time to be able to dive deep, but also folks who are very busy in their lives and want to just find some way to get the resources that they need and build their network within that 5 hours a week format. Okay, so there's a question about tuition assistance. So the program, we offer scholarships, and our general scholarships provide up to 75% of the tuition cost for the program. And those are merit-based scholarships, so they're awarded. There's just one very simple essay that you need to fill out in the application. So if you download that application checklist, it will have that scholarship prompt in there, or you can log into the application system and be able to see that essay. And it's a very open-ended essay in which you can share with us your experience and demonstrated interest in making an impact in the clean energy field. You can elaborate on your background and how that contributed to you participating or having restrictions on your participation of the program without tuition assistance. There's, it's really allows you to let us know a bit more about yourself. And then there's also a new scholarship that we've offered with the support of the 3 Karens program on climate change for the Global South. And so this provides 100% tuition assistance for participants who are accepted, and there's a limited number of them, but folks who are from the Global South and are working in those communities. And so there's a fair amount of tuition assistance available. And then there's been a couple questions on our admissions rates and the percentage of students who applied, accepted versus applied. So there's a few things. I think that there are some universities who publish their acceptance rates, and that helps lend a sort of exclusivity to their program. There's a lot of different metrics by which you could create that acceptance rate. So we don't publish our acceptance rate. I will tell you that this is a admissions-based program. So we do look at everybody's application holistically, and we are looking for people who have, we ask for transcripts, for example, because we want to be able to be sure of your success within the program and being able to understand some of those qualitative and quantitative aspects of the program. Then we look at your CV and look at your your career trajectory and what brought you into this space and sort of the impact that you've had so far, and just sort of the expertise that you could bring and the knowledge that you could bring that could add to our cohort. And so we're really, we are also interested in expanding the impact of our program and the reach and reducing barriers to access to knowledge here at Yale. And so, we try to run that fine line between accepting people into the program, but we want to ensure that accepting as many people into the program as we can, but we want to make sure we have enough staffing available to support your success and that you are positioned to be able to get something out of it. So we look at your application holistically, and that's where we decide on the numbers for each year. So I just encourage you to apply. The application is free and we will give your application a fair consideration if it's complete. The payment schedule and the tuition payment schedule is available on our website here. Let me see. I'll throw into the chat here for you all. So if you're interested in finding out more about scholarships, what the tuition is, and the tuition payment schedule, you can find it there. I've been asked if we can be flexible with the tuition payment schedule. If you have a special circumstance, please do reach out to us and we can have that conversation. I know that there are some employers who support your educational experiences and that those payments need to be done within a certain calendar. So that varies per person. So please just let us know by reaching out to cbay.admissions@yale.edu and we can have that conversation. And it looks like Lindsay had another question about the Renewable Energy Project Finance course. Figuring out, we'll be learning to build IRR models and arrive at a PPA price. So what I would suggest you do if you're interested in finding out more about the REPF course is first take a look at the week-by-week curriculum breakdown, which we shared, so that you can see the topics there. That course is designed to be be very practical. And so there's going to be a lot of emphasis on building that balance sheet and those financial models. We will be talking about IRR and how to build sensitivity analyses so you can see what aspects of your project are having the biggest impact on your return on investment. And we do talk about PPA prices and how those are set up, and also take a look at all of the contracts that really manage the risk and bring development partners together on those projects. So hopefully that answered Lindsay's question and everyone else's curiosities about that course.
And Coral, if people have more questions, which email address should they use?
So please submit your questions. If you still have outstanding questions, you can send them to cbay.admissions@yale.edu. And please be sure to, if you haven't yet, take a deep dive onto our website. There's a lot of questions that have been answered there. For example, we have a frequently asked questions part of our site. Let me just throw that in the chat as well. There we go. Okay, it looks like we've run 1 hour and gotten through everybody's submitted questions. So please, please do reach out to us if you have continued questions that need answering. Know that we have additional sessions that we're offering. So if you want to get a more insider perspective on that participant experience of being in the program, we have additional Ask Me Anything events, which are advertised on our website. We also have an Ask Me Anything session with Trent, Heather, and myself. So if you have questions for us, you can come then as well, and it'll be run in a Zoom meeting. So we'll see everybody's face and it'll be a more intimate conversation. And then please apply. The application is free and it closes on March 12th, just before midnight and Eastern Standard Time. So please get everything in. And then for folks who are admitted into the program, there will be an additional opportunity before you need to make any decisions. We'll have a virtual open house, and we can link you up with some of the previous and current participants if you want a little bit more insight. Thank you.